All right, we're live.
All
Hey,
right.
Wolfie.
Welcome. Welcome, our amazing left-wing family. I missed you guys so much last week. How you doing,
It
TJ?
wasn't the same without you, man. Wasn't the
I,
same without you.
that's what you want to hear.
You ever play sports and like you're a good player on the team
Mhm.
and then you get injured or something and then they play again and they do really well? You're like, you have these weird feelings like, oh, I'm glad the team did well, but God, that kind of makes me seem like I'm
Yeah,
irrelevant.
yeah. It's like
It's
I don't want you to lose, but I want you to look worse when I'm not there.
right? Yeah, you have like the ego and then the altruism. What I remember, I got injured playing football. I tore my meniscus, and uh, uh, the coach. I remember everyone was down, like, "Oh man, TJ's pretty good, so this is gonna be rough." And so the coach was in the locker room, was like, "Listen, I think we can have a great game next week, even without TJ." And it was a weird feeling I had because I was like, God, I hope they do, but I also hope they don't. It's pretty
It's not.
funny.
It's not. It's not. It's just that like call to the void. Like it's not what you really think, but the voice is there. It's.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
refuse to believe that people don't actually hear that voice. Like, you know what I mean? Like everyone's got to hear it at least a little bit.
That's true. That's true. All right. So, oh, I don't know if you saw. Where's my pen? I always have to have a pen when I do this because whenever we're having these conversations and someone makes a good point, I'm like, "Ooh, I'll remember that." I do not remember it. I don't.
Yep.
It's gone. It flies away. It's fart in the wind. And so I always kind of scribble it and write it down. And so it's necessary to do this. But I don't know if you saw the title I had for this live, but
I,
it would.
I did, and I have no idea what it's about, but I can't
Oh, it's
find
great.
out.
It's great. It's great. You're going to love it. You're going to love it. So I'll hop right into it. So, believe it or not, corporal punishment is still a thing in several states in public schools. Like it's still legal, at least that you can. I was stunned to find this out. I
In
thought for sure
public
that this would have.
schools, like
Yeah,
like
I
like
was.
normal people, public, not like random
I
Catholic
was
private schools. Like
stunned, man,
that's
stunned to find.
insane.
Right, and so I ran across this clip from the Oklahoma Senate, I believe, and there was a bill that's been put forth that, in fact, hold on, let me share what the bill is. Let's see. All right, so the Oklahoma Senate on Tuesday passed a bill that would ban schools from corporal punishment on children with disabilities. House Bill 1028 passed by a vote of 31 to 11 and returns to the House for consideration. The adopted Florida substitute defines corporal punishment as hitting, slapping, paddling, or any other means of inflicting physical pain. The disabilities range from autism and deafness to orthopedic impairment and speech and language impairment. So, first, I mean,
TJ,
obviously,
TJ, I need you to put that back up because the bolded excerpt that they had on that screen is one of the funniest things I've seen in so long. Yeah, Oklahoma Senators quote Bible call bill to end corporal punishment in children with disabilities. Communist ideology. That
it,
that is an onion headline right there.
it
Like
is.
genuinely.
Listen, and I have a video. I have a video from
Can't
about
wait.
this thing, and that is what I'm saying. For the first thing that I wanted to point out was we're going to end corporal punishment, but only for disabled kids. Kids who aren't suffering from disabilities, yeah, go ahead, wail away at us. Like, wow, like what year is this, man? Like, that is fucking insane. And so it passed the Senate. I don't know how it's going to go in the House and everything like that, and it passed pretty strongly, but man, 11 people voted against that. Like, what kind of people are we talking about here? And one of the people who voted against it is who I'm going to be showing a clip on in a little bit. But it's just, God, it's just psychotic. Like, what kind of fucking world are we living in now? I'm going to show this video here of a guy, a Republican, surprise, surprise, talking about why he thinks it's a bad idea to get rid of this. Let's see. What did I title this thing? Give me a second here. I'll title it Corporal Punishment. Okay.
We're taking a tool that has been in the hands of parents and in the hands of schools to maintain discipline. And we're removing it from the parent's prerogative and saying, we, Big Brother, the state of Oklahoma, knows what's best for your child, and we're removing an entire motivational tool from discipline in the classroom. And this is an erosive and a corrosive element in the United States whenever Dr. Benjamin Spock published a book that said, don't discipline your children, don't spank your children. And a lot of people don't know that. His voice was elevated because it...
Oh, sorry.
Dr. Benjamin Spock was a socialist who ran for the People's Party. That means he's a communist, okay? And disrupting discipline and defying scripture is precisely what the Communist Party and socialists do by increment. Proverbs 22:15. Foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child, but the rod of discipline drives it from him. So at the end of the day, it's a very simple question. Do you believe the parents have the right, in partnership with the schools, to determine what disciplinary protocols should be put in place? Or are we going to create an entire class of individuals sending a strong message from here? We know better than the parents, and if you have hearing impairment or you're visually impaired, suddenly you're in a class of people that cannot be disciplined. Are we sending a message that we don't love our children? Whoever spares the rod hates their child, but the rod of discipline will drive foolishness from their hearts.
So what can you say to that, man? Like, what could you possibly...
I don't know how everyone in that room kept a straight face.
Right?
And I wanted to address, so down to see the comments. It looks like, I don't know which one of them is, but the Voidcast is in here. I'm going to guess it's Rory. He asked what this is about. I want to clarify this. This is not about a bill which bans spanking children in public schools. It's about a bill which bans spanking disabled children only.
Right? This
is just for the disabled children.
Yeah, and it's this is a terrifying topic. Glad you're telling me. Yeah, it's like it's just so dark and for first, I didn't know that you could do this at all. I thought that was outlawed, years ago.
I did too, TJ. I was like, are they when it first came up? I thought it was like they're introducing a bill to bring back spanking. I did not realize that it was legal.
Yeah. And actually, one thing I want to talk about is that he says that I can't remember what he says, that if you spare the rod, that just shows me he hadn't read that transcript. Like he was reading it and he fucked it up because he hadn't read it. And so, but the idea that a child does something, does some infraction in the school, and your response is, okay, I think that the school should be able to beat the kid. And someone says, no, I don't think that that's actually a good idea. And his argument is not only like, when you take away the biblical part, is we are taking away the parents' rights to do. Say, no, the parents have nothing. What are you talking about?
It's like he was saying it and truly believing that the words that were coming out of his mouth meant the opposite of what they actually did. Yes, they're paddling disabled children.
They're paddling disabled children. Yeah, it's like
they're fighting to continue. Let me be clear. They are doing it, and they're fighting for the right to continue doing it. TJ, you're right. Like that he's just like the parents, right? The parent can still beat the shit out of their kid if they want, I assume,
Right?
in
Yeah,
Oklahoma. Like, if they want to do that. This is about, hey, maybe the teacher shouldn't be hitting the kids for the parents.
Yeah, and he goes on to say later is that if the parents want to do this in conjunction with the school, it's like no, why? It's one of the rare times that I'm actually speechless.
It's so much wrong. There's so much wrong with all of it that it's just like I don't know how human adults in the year 2024 listen to this and don't. I want to slap this guy.
I do.
That's the only reasonable reaction.
And he brings out the Trump card where he's like, by the way, this whole movement of not spanking your kids, that came from Dr. Benjamin Spock. Did you know he was a socialist? That's how you know it's bullshit. That's like, wait a minute. It's just a series of non sequiturs. The entire argument was a series of non sequiturs. And it's just one of those things where you look back in history and you see like speeches of people saying, I think that homosexuality should be illegal. People should go to jail for that and stuff. It's one of those moments where, in a very short period of time, people are like, wow, I can't believe anyone actually said that. Like an elected government official. And and not even like trying to like hide it behind euphemisms and shit. It's like, no, I think not only do I think that the school should be able to beat your kids, but they definitely should be able to beat the disabled kids. I am all for that. How else are they going to learn if you don't hit them a few times? So I was paddled in second grade for talking too much. I'm a talker. It didn't make me talk any less. It's like, it's
so obvious. It's so obvious to any, like, I've never raised a kid before, but it's so obvious as someone who has coached kids, who has taught kids that hitting them doesn't get you anywhere. It doesn't teach them anything. Like, it's so clearly obvious. Like, and I do it. I coach them in wrestling. I have the opportunity to inflict pain punitively, totally legally. It doesn't fucking work. It doesn't help them learn at all. It doesn't help them behave better. I don't know who thinks this.
Well, I mean, it can work. Like, it can. Like, if for example, like if there's a rule in the school that you can't chew gum in class, and every time you chewed gum, someone slapped you in the face, yeah, that would work. I would stop chewing gum. But you don't need to do that. Like, that's not a necessary way to stop people from chewing gum. Like, you could shoot them in the face if you want. I guarantee, like, gum chewing in class would be at 0%.
You could shoot one kid in the face.
Done.
No more gum chewing.
Exactly. And it's just not necessary. And that we've had just decades and decades of studies on the fact that, corporal punishment for your children actually has adverse effects with the kids. It doesn't really help them at all. And one thing that I talk about a lot is because one argument they'll make is that, well, listen, for older kids, sure, you can talk and you can reason with them and everything. But for really young kids, you can't talk and reason, which is true. I mean, you can't have like a philosophical discussion about, deontology with a 7-year-old. That's not going to happen. But they're like, so in that case, you need to hit them so they know what's going on. I was like, okay, well, if that's true, then if they can't understand right and wrong, the hitting isn't going to help. Like, it's not. Like, it's not going to do it. You're right back to where you started. So yeah. And he also definitely put in this statement saying that, so we're telling people that if they're disabled that we're not going to punish them, or we're not going to. No, that's not what it says. That's not what it says. It says we're not going to hit them. And the Republican Party is just like at this point in time, like I gave up on this a long time ago, but at this point in time, if you still support the Republican Party, there's no hope for you. Like, there just isn't. There isn't at all.
It's, people on the left will get mad at me when I say this, but the people who are like the Republicans and Democrats are the same. Like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, because I totally agree with you that like liberals tend to side with fascists against, I get that whole thing, but Jesus Christ, I've never seen a Democrat say that it should be legal for public schools to beat disabled children. You'll never see that ever.
No,
Anywhere in this
no.
country, you will not see that. These are clearly different parties and different ideologies. And it's funny, the thing you said there, the thing that you mentioned, you were talking about hitting kids. But when they said, oh, well, what, you can't punish them then? But like, that's the same fucking argument I've heard time and time and time and time and time again about Israel, where it's like, oh, what, Israel can't defend itself? Oh, what Hamas just gets away with it? It's like, no, these are unrelated things. You can do things to punish Hamas that don't involve flattening neighborhoods. You can do things to punish kids that don't involve hitting them. It's the same argument. Just copy, cut, paste. Don't think about it. We're just going to use it again. And I don't know why people don't see it.
I don't either. It just goes back to, like, they're conservatives. They think that just because something happened in the past, we need to hold on to it. Like, it's a good idea. And you can show them all the data, you can show them all the research. It doesn't matter because, oh yeah, that's what happened in the past. And you know, another good example of this is, you ever hear like Gen Xers or millennials? They say it too, where they talk about how, so when we were kids, you know, our parents on Saturdays, our Saturday mornings went like this. Like, I didn't watch you growing up when you were a kid, John, but I can guarantee this is how your Saturday went. You woke up in the morning, you got yourself a bowl of cereal, you watched Saturday morning cartoons for a couple of hours, and then you went outside, you played with your friends, and you, like, with no adult supervision, you were gone from the house for, 5-6 hours, came back for lunch, left again, and we're gone for another 4 or 5 hours. Then it got dark and you had to come home, and your parents were never around, which is an insane thought today, that you would just leave your kids unsupervised all day long outside. And so millennials will harken back to that, and they say, look, we got kids, we got parents, they're always watching their kids, they're making sure that they're all right, and the kids don't have any freedom, they're not out to explore, it's kind of soft, we made it fine. And it's like, yeah, you did. But if you look at the crime rates and stuff, there were way more kidnappings for children back in our day than there are today. And that's because parents are watching them. It's like a weird survivorship bias that they can't wrap their mind around because, well, they're conservatives. They're not that bright.
Yeah, it is. I've seen that same thing, and I'm always just like, but how do you think that was good for you? Because like, I can look back at the fucked up things of, like, my parents fucked up raising me, and I'm just like, yeah, no, I know how those negatively affected me. And it seems like, and I was kind of I was a little bit of a tweener in terms of like the parental supervision thing. My parents totally let me, out unsupervised around the neighborhood and stuff, but they weren't like the boomers where it was just like, my parents would just be like, yeah, if you were home before the sunset, we assumed you did something wrong. Like, that's how their parents were. But like it when I watch like 80s movies, like stuff like that, and you see like the bullies in them, and you're just like, wait a second, this bully's like taking out a knife and like threatening to stab this kid. And it's just like, how did any of this? How did everyone survive? I don't know how.
A lot of them
survived.
didn't. A lot
of them didn't. A lot of them did. A lot of them were traumatized for life, and we didn't have therapy back then, so they never fucking unpacked it. They just lived with it and assumed that, oh, that's the way that life goes, and never got any better. Never grew emotionally at all after the age of 20. And yeah, that does explain a lot, actually, DJ. That they just never did any of that.
And they do this with spanking. It's like, hey, I got spanked and I'm fine. It's like, listen, I know you and you are not. You're not fine. I tell you, you're not fine at all. And if I think I was spanked growing up, and I remember in the Army, in college, I kind of realized, like, I did the studies and stuff. It's like, okay, well, the spanking's not necessary. But when it really hit home for me was in the Army. Because in the Army, they're incredibly strict. They're incredibly, hardcore with the training and the punishment and everything. But you know what? They never hit you. They never do. Well, they used to back in the day, but the last 20, 30 years, if you fuck up, your sergeant isn't going to come punch you in the face. That's not going to happen. And guess what? People still they learn discipline, and the same thing works everywhere else. Like everywhere, like if you mess up in your job, your boss isn't going to come beat the shit out of you, but you learn. Like there are ways to teach people, like, okay, there's positive and negative reinforcement. You do something that's incorrect, we'll help teach you, we'll help train you on how to do this, and you can learn, and it doesn't require any physical harm. Kids are no different. They're no different. There's nothing unique about being a child that's like, well, they're not going to learn unless they get a sore backside. It's like, it's a weird thing that they hold on to. And I don't know. It's just one of those things that people like to glob on from their childhood because things were better back in those days when they very obviously weren't.
Yeah, and circling it back to the the politics of it, it's very interesting to see the same party that wants to get rid of all mention of gender ideology in schools in order to protect the kids, because, and you hear this all the time when they talk about it, like, oh, well, we don't know the long-term effects of this stuff on children, like it hasn't been studied enough yet, and so we should just keep it out just to be safe. And then they turn around, the same fucking parties like, yeah, no, we know there's mountains and mountains of evidence to say that you shouldn't hit kids. But the guy who started that was a fucking socialist, so we're just not going to listen to it. And we're going to hit the disabled children. We're going to go and just off on a limb just in case it works and the communists are wrong.
Yeah.
I don't expect them to be ideologically consistent. The thing I always say that I would assume that the average GOPer does not want public schools hitting children. I rarely give Republicans the benefit of the doubt, but I would be very surprised to find a poll that says that like the majority of Republicans agree with this. Mm-hmm. But like they never fucking call it out. Like they never ever call it out when their side does something fucked up. And they do the same thing with abortion all the time, where they'll argue like, oh no, we totally agree with things. Like we don't think that you should have to have a kid if you were raped or it was incest or something. And then like a state makes you have a kid if you're raped or it's incest or something. And they're just like, yeah, I guess if that's what they're going to do, states' rights, I guess. And it's what it is. You can't have both positions. You have to fight. If you're going to take the moderate position, you have to fight the extremists. You can't just like go along with them.
Yeah. It's just so frustrating. And it just gets worse and worse every time I look, because like earlier, like last year, I remember looking at this, like it was Iowa, I think, that was passing, Iowa, Florida, and Idaho, who were trying to relax child labor laws. Mm-hmm. And they had this thing where children under 16 or between like 14 and 17 they wanted to allow them to work construction work and demolition work, and they wanted to expand the hours they were allowed to work. Like they were allowed to work overnight on school nights. And it's like, what is your goal here? Like what is it here? Like, I mean, it's just like, yeah, I think kids need to do worse in school because they're working. And it's like, it's like cartoonish levels of evil that I shouldn't be surprised, but I keep finding myself surprised that they're saying this shit out loud. Like I never in a million years would have guessed that there would be someone openly, like in front of God and everyone, saying, yeah, we should be able to spank disabled kids. Like why not? We would be doing them a disservice if we sold that away from them. Like it's insane. It's insanity.
It's taking away parental choice. If we're not allowed to spank their children,
right? I know, yeah. It doesn't make any sense at all.
Can you imagine, TJ? Can you imagine you fucking moved to Oklahoma with your disabled fucking child, and just your kid comes home and he's just like, "Yeah, I got spanked today."
Yeah,
and you're just like, "You got what?" Like you wouldn't even know how to react.
Where is that parent's choice? Like, right. Where's that parent's choice? It's like, nope, sorry, we have the right to spank your kids. Like, a stranger is going to bend your child over and hit them. It's like, what? Gee, I know that. I saw that like a couple hours ago, and I just had to share it today because
And
it
by the
was
way, where's the kids' choice? I just want to roll this all the way down. Where's the kid's choice? Does the kid not have a right to defend himself against the person fucking assaulting him? What fucking, even for a conservative, like, I feel like the right to self-defense is pretty fucking standard. You know, does the kid get to pull out his concealed fucking carry and blow his teacher's head off if he tries to spank him? You know, and then the teacher starts a crossfire with it doesn't make any sense, TJ.
It doesn't. Well, conservatives don't see children as people. They see
That's
them
true.
as
They're
they
people.
see
They're
them as like a property owned by their parents, and which is why they talk all the time about the parents' rights to do this, the parents' rights. Like, yeah, okay, but there's another person here. There's a kid. The kid gets a say in this too. Like, sure, kids don't have all the rights, so that's irresponsible. But when it comes to something like someone assaulting you in your school because you were late for class, I think the kid should have a say in whether or not that should happen. And that's like, I don't know. I just want to bring that up. That was just a wild story.
It's insane. Just legalized assault of children. Yeah, fuck. So what's been piquing your interest this week, TJ?
Oh man, so the Trump trial's going on, the Stormy Daniels trial, and Ethan and I were talking about it last week, and that this is the one I care about the least, honestly, the Stormy Daniels trial. Like, I'm not going to say it's a bullshit trial because it's not, because, he did break the law, and his co-conspirator Michael Cohen actually went to jail for this shit. So you can't say that this is just, nonsense and everything. No, this is an actual crime, and people did go to jail. And then how would it be fair for Trump to go to jail, for Cohen to go to jail, but Trump doesn't, and all that. But watching Trump, once again, his grandiose use of superlatives. I love watching him come out there and saying, no judge has ever been more corrupt than this one. No police force has ever been surrounding a court more than this. Like, he always does it. And I don't know how people let him get away with this shit. Like, I don't know how anyone lets him get away with saying shit like that. But the Trump trial has been pretty fascinating to me. I don't know if you know. Do you know who Stephen A. Smith is? I imagine you do. You're a sports guy. Yeah. Stephen A. Yeah. So Stephen A. Smith went on Sean Hannity's show a couple days ago, and he was saying that when Trump mentioned the fact that the black community is really identifying with him now because they know what it's like to be, unjustly prosecuted and everything. Stephen A. Smith said, "Hey, I think Trump's got a point." I said, "You've got to be kidding me. You have got to be." He's like, "Yeah, black people do know what that's like." And once again, I've mentioned this many times, is that, okay, if you're a Republican and you're going with that, are you saying that black people are unjustly targeted by cops? Because that's the premise right here. And last I checked, every Republican I know says that's bullshit. They say, nope, black people are treated worse because they behave worse. That's it. But when it comes to Donald Trump, that he's actually being treated unfairly, and that's why black people identify with it. It doesn't make any sense at all. And so that really Stephen A. Smith has always been kind of right-wing adjacent. Like, he's always, he has like Sean Hannity and Mark Levin are his friends and everything. But, just hearing like a prominent black entertainer say something like that, it's like, buddy, come on, that's just not true at all.
That was a really appropriate job title you gave him, entertainer, because that's what Stephen A. does. He entertains. Exactly. I really try not to take anything he said. It's weird in sports. We've all learned, Stephen A., he's just a take merchant. He's just going to side with whichever side is going to create the conflict and get the views. And so he says wildly entertaining shit. And once you accept that about him, he's actually kind of fun. And I don't know why he's like walking into politics, considering like analysis and influence has never been what his sports game has been about. But like he suddenly wants to enter the world of politics with his discourse. So like, I don't know. Hats off to you, Stephen A. But yeah, it's just dumb. I don't understand how anyone can sit there who isn't in the conservative bubble. Like, as much as Stephen A. definitely walks in alt-right circles with Handy and stuff, I wouldn't have ever considered like Stephen A. capital C conservative.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I would have imagined he's a pretty moderate Republican, just normal
Mhm.
rich guy. But
Yeah.
like, it's weird for him to say that, because it's like when I talk to people in the bubble, there's nothing they love more than throwing a slogan that the left or liberals use back at them.
Yeah,
And
I know.
'cause
They love it.
they absolutely love that, just as much as I love saying facts don't care about your feelings. And the thing they don't do, because they're conservatives, they don't like figure out why that phrase means what it means. And so they just think that, you know, people on the left must think it applies in every situation. And this is one of them. They're like, oh, well, you know, you guys have always been saying this. Well, it's happening to Trump. And it's like, well, you can't hold both positions. Either it's happening to everyone or it's specifically happening to Donald Trump. And I don't know which one is more absurd in their mind.
Yeah, yeah. It is like when you talk about Stephen A. Smith and how he's like a small C conservative, it's because he's a black guy, but he's a rich black guy.
Mhm.
And like once you start making all that money, you start drifting to the right real quick. It happens it's like when Michael Jordan, I mean, back in the early 90s or late 80s or something, they asked him why he did, like, hey, listen, you are the most well-known black person on planet Earth. You could do Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was a huge social advocate and everything for minority causes and everything. And it's like, well, how come you're not like Kareem and saying this stuff? And his response was, well, Republicans buy sneakers too. And that, I mean, it's like, because yeah, all right, I'm not going to alienate people, and so he chose money over, political principles. And 50 Cent is another one. I remember 50 Cent saying a couple years back where he was like, hey, listen, we talk bad about Trump and everything, but he did pretty well for my bank account. And it's like, okay, so people they will sell out their people in a second when it comes like Ice Cube. Ice Cube is another one. Like, if you listen to Ice Cube in the 80s from his NWA days, like radical stuff, like fuck the police and like the government is, or now he was like working with the Trump campaign on trying to, what was it called? The Platinum Plan, to try to get black people to vote for Donald Trump. Like, once you start getting money, you start selling out really quick. And the thing you said about how conservatives, they take slogans and they just apply it to everything. Liberals do this too, but they apply it to everything. So, for example, they'll be like, well, I'm pro-choice. And they say, oh, you're pro-choice. Well, I don't want to get a vaccine. I thought you were pro-choice. It's like, okay, that's not what pro-choice is in reference to. Like, it's not at all. And so, but liberals doing the
I will give that one to them. At least it's like in the right area. At least it's like a kind of ideologically consistent if you don't look too hard into it.
Well, the thing is that, so one thing I like to say is that words don't have meanings, they have usages. And the same goes for phrases. So pro-choice doesn't literally mean you are pro every single choice. Like, you should be able to make any choice you want no matter what. Like, no, that's not what pro-choice means. Pro-choice in the political context apply specifically to abortion, and the right and the left does it with the pro-life too, because they say, oh, you're pro-life, but you're against capital punishment. Okay, well, pro-life does not refer to anything other than abortion. So, and I don't like when people do that. And then the right did it with Black Lives Matter. And they came out with Blue Lives Matter. Like, oh, so you're saying no one else matters? It's just Black lives. Okay, well, if you say Blue Lives Matter, you're saying no one else matters but blue lives. Like you know how fucking human language works. And so it's just, I don't like those specious arguments, but they happen all the time because they're easy. And more importantly, like you mentioned, like with Stephen A. Smith, it riles people up. It gets a reaction, and that's what people go for. I've gotten so sick and tired of, I was on Twitter yesterday, and I don't know if you know who Brianna Joy Gray is, but she was
that name is definitely coming to mind.
Yeah, she was I think she was the campaign manager or on the campaign staff of Bernie Sanders.
Yep. She was a Bernie person. Yeah.
And so ever since Bernie lost and everything, she's been on this, I am a hardcore leftist, but I fucking hate the Democratic Party and I want to do everything to destroy it. And so she is always talking about how, she's not voting for Joe Biden. She thinks it's terrible and everything. And look, that's her prerogative. Sure, go for it. But I saw her post a tweet the other day that said, I can't wait to not vote for Joe Biden. Now, there's no reason to post that tweet other than rage bait. That's it. Like she knows that she's going to post that, and a bunch of liberals are going to say, you're making the right decision. You're making the wrong decision. You're going to be responsible for Trump. Like, why? Like, why do you do that? I don't understand it. I don't get spite. I don't understand spite. I don't get it. Which is what fuels the entire Trump movement. Like the entire Trump movement is we can't wait to make the liberals cry. Like we can't wait to hurt their feelings. And they don't even care about policy. It's just that we don't like libs and we want to see them miserable. And for the life of me, I can never understand that way of thinking.
I feel like, I always talk about how people get to where they are, and it's specifically on the left. I always find it interesting to see where people are, and I don't know Brianna's story other than that she was a Bernie staffer. But the interesting thing I find, I feel like a lot of people who come to leftism through theory, through reading Das Kapital,
nerd shit,
the fucking nerd shit. Like I feel like they tend to go this way a lot more often than people who come to it like myself through economics and philosophy. Because to me, that viewpoint is ideologically inconsistent with so many of the things that drive me to agree with the same policy positions as her. And when I say her, I'm not attacking her specifically.
Right.
The type of leftist who's spiteful and like destroy the Democratic Party and fuck Joe Biden, we're not voting for him. And it just doesn't make sense to me, because from my perspective, the reason we do this is to help people. And if we're going to make an action which doesn't help people and in fact hurts people, what's the point if we're not serving the greater good? And whenever they go, oh, well, but it's better, greater good if we destroy the Democratic Party, which first of all, that's a big fucking if. There's absolutely, you're not making that claim based on evidence. It's just fucking spite, like you said. It's just your gut wanting to be angry and be spiteful. There's absolutely no evidence that this would ever destroy the Democratic Party. When you tried it with Hillary, it didn't fucking work. And I don't understand why you would want to try it again. And again, I'm also not blaming leftists for Hillary. That was Hillary's fault. Leftists not voting for her didn't really affect anything. But still, the point still stands. She lost and it didn't work. And it's not going to work again. And you're really just doing this out of spite. And the same thing that drives, as you said, all of MAGA. It's this from a philosophical perspective, it is the same motivating factor. And I just don't understand how anyone who supports most of the policy positions I do has that as a main driver, because I don't know how you get to we need to do good things to improve the lives of people when your main motivator is seemingly spite.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I think I can understand it if you are convinced it will work. I can get it. I can see it, but and in a way, maybe I can, because
But then how did you get to all of our policy positions? Like, did you just guess right? Because again, there's no evidence that this would ever work, and most of our policy positions are backed by evidence. It's kind of a big thing about the left that the right doesn't really follow.
Well, so for me, if I were to steelman this, I would say that. So, we didn't support Clinton in 2016. We got Trump, but, after that, we did get Biden. So, like, it's not like it ushered in like a strong conservative, and the conservative movement is collapsing. So that's what, hi Wolfie, thing that I would say. But the issue, that's what I was going to say with this. The issue with this is that
steel manning.
Yeah, with steel manning that, but to me, it's like, I'm not convinced that, just like, we're going to back a third party here, that's ever going to work. Like, not in our current system. In our current system, like, we know that, if you just try to back a third party or whatever, you're just going to make it more likely for anyone who's close to you to lose. You're only helping the other team. But I always tell people, like, if you could show me some evidence like that this would work, I would be all for it, because I don't want to vote for Democrats either, right? But if you
I
can
would
show
love
me
to
like
not vote for him.
exactly, yeah.
I casted my vote for uncommitted yesterday. It was the most satisfying primary vote cast of my entire life.
Yeah. So if you could show me like any plan, like a plan, and when you ask them what the plan is usually something like, well, we need to focus on, community actions. Oh, yeah, that's great. Yeah, sure, do that, but that's an like do that as well, because focusing on community action and not holding on to like a slight vestige of power that we have, minimal as it may be, you're only making it harder for yourself. If I would much rather try to help my local community under a liberal rule than under conservative rule. Like I would. I mean, we've seen what the conservatives want, and it's not going to make our job any simpler. That's how I see it.
And it's not like it just shows a complete lack of understanding for the Overton window. Like, you have to shift it to the left in order to get more progressive policy passed. If you let the government keep going right, it shifts the Overton window with it. And the steps that people are going to be willing to take are suddenly going to seem more radical because they're farther away from the norm. And is that incredibly biased? Yes, but it's a bias all humans have, and we have to deal with in a democracy. And that's the thing. At the end of the day, the problem is that they're coming from this Marxist ideology, but like they're not willing to put their money where their mouth is. And by their money, I mean their physical human bodies in an armed revolution, because that's the only way that this ideology actually makes sense, is if you're going to go all the way down. It's kind of very similar to me, I feel like, to how we've said it before, how like conservatives who are totally cool with banning abortion in the case of rape, like, you know what, you're worse, in my opinion, morally, but I respect your logical consistency more. Like, it makes a lot more sense to be like, oh no, abortion's killing a baby, no one can do that. And in the same case where, like, yeah, it makes sense. If I want to destroy the Democratic Party, it's holding us all back. Like, yeah, no, all of this makes sense. Armed revolution is therefore the only way to do it if you can't do it through voting. And if you can do it through voting, it's just dumb to vote for a third party. And if you can't do it through voting, then your only choice is armed revolution. And so, like, but so many of the people who aren't voting for Biden, who are like, fuck that, also wouldn't pick up a gun. And
they're not going to do an armed revolution.
They're not. So, like, you said, there's no plan. There's no plan.
It's just as delusional as all of the right wingers who are like, I got to keep my guns in case the government gets tyrannical. It's like, no, what are you talking about? Like, it's not, you're living in a fantasy world. And listen, trust me, I am all for like an armed overthrow of this horrible system we have. I just know the circumstances, though, that is a revolution that will fail. Like, we will all die. And so this is a problem that we have on the left, but on the right, they have it too. But we seem to think there are way more of us than there are. There are not a lot of us. There aren't. Yeah. We are a small percentage of the population. Like, your average American, you come up to them and you even mention, like, they couldn't, like gun to their mother's head, they couldn't tell you what dialectical materialism is. Like, no clue. And so, this idea that I was like, oh yeah, was like, no, this is going to take time. This is going to take a lot of time. None of us are going to live to see this. And so I would rather like try to incrementally work there than, try to, blow my load at once and then it collapse. And then maybe we never get a shot at it again. And I don't know. It's just, once again, I'm not saying that they're wrong or that they're stupid. I'm just saying I do not see a battle plan here that makes sense to me. And until I do, I can't get on board with it.
I couldn't agree more, TJ. I mean, those are my thoughts exactly. That's why I'll end up voting for. I'm gonna fucking hate voting for Biden. It's gonna physically pain me to check that name box, but it is going to make me feel better when I look over it, across the fucking ballot, and I see Donald Trump. And like, that's it. We are in the belly of the beast, as the phrase goes. And if you can't throw away that opportunity. Like throwing away your vote is just throwing away any ability for any sort of positive change unless you're picking up a gun. And if you're not picking up a gun, the ballot box is where to do it. And it's really just virtue signaling. Like at the end of the day, I don't think this about Brianna Joy Gray. I think she genuinely drinks the Kool-Aid. But like for most of it out there, it's just virtue signaling. That's it. Like it's just, I hate the Democrats more than you do, you fucking liberal, conservative, fascist cuck. Like that's it. Like that's the entire thing, and that nothing else will matter to them.
So it's funny. I think the opposite. The opposite. Like I think Brianna Joy Gray is just doing this for clout and doing it for clicks and doing it.
Oh, you think she's building that thing?
She's making a lot of money off of this. Like there's like, and when I saw this, she was like, there's no reason. Like we all know this. Like she's been saying this for years now. There's no reason she had to just make sure. I can't wait to not vote for Joe Biden unless she wanted to, generate a lot interaction.
I mean, that tweet specifically is totally virtue signaling, and whatever, flaming up the base. That's not the right word. But I mean, like, I think she genuinely holds the position that not voting for Biden is the correct thing to do. I think she genuinely thinks that. Whereas I'm saying, I feel like a lot of people who you see talking about that don't actually think that. They just kind of do it to virtue signal, and it's more so to them that they don't think any vote matters, and so they might as well virtue signal.
So yeah, I guess there's two different categories there, because I know a lot of people that I talk to about this. I believe them. Like I believe them. I get it, because I felt that way in 2016. Because in 2016, it's like, listen, I don't want to vote for Hillary Clinton because I know what her position is on, U.S. global military hegemony. And I was still in the military at the time. It's like, I don't want to vote for someone who could get me or some of my friends killed. Like that was my thought process there. So I can imagine there are a lot of people like that. But yeah, sure, there are some who do it performatively. I mean, of course, but I do know that it is possible to, and honestly, a lot of people have just checked out of electoral politics altogether. They just like that. A lot of lefties just don't believe in electoral politics, and I don't know if that's a show, because like that's like an entire theory of how electoral politics don't really matter. I think it's stupid. It absolutely does matter, but it does matter.
Ask the disabled children getting paddled in Oklahoma.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it. But holy shit, it's only 9:52. We wanted to talk about something. John and I, before the show, we were talking about people who have privilege who don't realize they have privilege. And I knew a guy who I was talking to a while ago, and he was saying that, I paid my way through college, I worked real hard, and I don't have any sympathy for people who don't. And the guy's dad was a fucking millionaire. Like the guy's dad was a fucking millionaire. And so, listen, I believe him. I believe that he actually did work through college and that he struggled and everything. And he had a small ramshackle house, and, he didn't want to, leech off his dad and everything. Yeah, I'm sure it was hard. However, your dad was a millionaire. And you knew that if shit hit the fan, you and your wife and your kids could go live with your parents, or they would take care of you, or something like that. And my parents weren't millionaires, but I was broke coming out of college, like all people are, the first year out of college and everything. And I didn't have any money. I was looking at my budget for the month, and I had no money for food. I had no idea how I was going to eat. And out of nowhere, my folks sent me just this letter with a check for $400. Hey, TJ, just thinking about you. Hope this helps. I didn't ask them. They had no idea I was going through a struggle. And people don't realize how incredibly valuable that safety net is. Just knowing that you can take a risk, just knowing that someone will take care of you if something goes wrong, because a lot of people don't have that. And to shit on folks who have parents who could barely afford to feed them when they were in the house, and now they're out of the house, you can't go ask them for a loan. You can't ask them to move back in with them and raise their expenditures. And it's just, I just don't know how more people don't recognize this, because I caught on very early that that's the way the world works.
Yeah, I believe it was 13 IQ points. A study, the study by Princeton University found that people who are under the cognitive strain of poverty have score a IQ test of 13 points lower, because that mental strain of constantly, and again, this study, the way they did it, it wasn't even like they were actually in poverty. It's just they changed variables to make them feel like they've lost money and are now stressing about it. And that was the 13 points. So imagine how much it is when you see a when you have every day trying to make ends meet, worrying that like next month you might not have a place to live, your kids might not be able to eat. That is a constant fucking strain that you aren't thinking about an entrepreneurial endeavor that you might take. You aren't applying for new jobs to use as leverage to increase your wages. You aren't, educating yourself and upskilling and making yourself a more valuable member of the workforce. You're not doing any of those things because you're just stressed about being able to live next week. And that is so detrimental. And I remember, like, genuinely, me and my fiance, like, we had conflicts about this early on, and it's something that I understood. But like, she comes from an immigrant family, never had anything growing up. She moved 18 times. She, lived in, it was really, really hard for her, and her whole family has that kind of mindset. Whereas my upper middle class suburban white ass, like, I know my parents are gonna get my back. I can fuck up pretty darn badly, and it's not gonna like ruin my life. I'm not gonna go homeless. Like it's there all the time, constantly available to me. So I would be like, why don't you like stand up for yourself more when your boss says that? And she's like, because I don't want to get fired. I'm like, what happens if you get fired? It's like, we might not be able to pay rent. I'm like, we'll be able to pay rent. She's like, yeah, but what if we're not? I'm like, well, worst case scenario, we end up at my parents. She's like, well, I don't want to be at your parents. I'm like, I don't either, but I also don't want to be talked to that like by my boss. And they're like, why don't you like advocate for whatever? And it's like, she won't do things that would improve her life because she has this poverty brain. I would lay it out, be like, yo, this is obviously the correct thing to do. She's like, yeah, but it's not worth the risk. And it's like, like for someone who doesn't have that safety net and who hasn't operated their whole life with that safety net in place, I can understand why it seems like it's not worth the risk. To me, losing a job is, a bad month. To
Right.
a lot of people in this country, losing a job is the straw that goes from I can live a normal life to I'm homeless for the next couple of years. And it is a totally different life. And anyone who says anything like that, did you see the fucking millionaire who did the social?
I heard about that.
Oh my god! I'm like, are you well familiar with it?
No, but I know the basics of the story. But you go ahead.
Yeah. The guy, he was like a millionaire. He gave all of his money away. I don't know how like serious that is, but like he apparently like got rid of all of his money and went homeless. And he's like, I'm going to make $1 million in a year. And he ended up making like $34,000 and quitting in like 6 months because of health problems. It's just such an obvious example of like, and the other thing is people know this. People know that it takes money to make money. Like that is a thing that every American knows. Every American has heard that phrase, but for some reason they don't think it takes money to make money for people in poverty. Like that, they're going to be able to make money without money somehow.
Yeah, it is wild. But they also think that, the rich people are our betters, and that, sure, they deserve that high class, luxurious life because they deserved it. And I tell you what, if you took away all their money within a couple of years, they'd have it all back. It's like, no, they wouldn't. If that's the case, why not give away all their money now and let them earn it again? Like it would be like this perpetual motion machine of free money for everybody. And since they're so amazing, why not do it? But they don't, because it's bullshit. It's just so frustrating. I talk about this a lot, in that being risk averse when you're growing up in poverty, it stays with you for the rest of your life. I've seen it many times, and it's easy for me to cast judgment on people like this. And it's like, well, why? That is the dumbest decision you could possibly make. But I didn't grow up that way. And even when I was an adult and I started, working on my own, there was a while there for years, I was living paycheck to paycheck, but I remember, I still remember the day it happened when it was payday, and I didn't realize it was payday because I didn't bother checking. I didn't. It didn't matter to me, and I was like, "Oh my god!" Like I couldn't imagine thinking that way, like 5-10 years earlier, because I knew I had the money there, and it like I'm not rich by any means, but I'm I'm doing better than the vast majority of Americans, and to the point now, like I remember having the thought that, holy shit, for me, everything is essentially free. Like it is. Like I mean, it does that unless I'm making a purchase of like $2,000 or $3,000. I don't even bother. Like I check in the bank account. I don't. Like it doesn't matter to me. And so, like that weight off your shoulders and that freedom and that clarity of mind and that peace that you have, it's indescribable, because like I instead of I still remember worrying every day. It's like, oh man, am I gonna be able to afford this? And then I feel bad about it too sometimes. Like I talk to people, and they were like collecting coupons and stuff to go shopping and shit. And it's like I would never bother doing that. Like I why would I do that? And so I look back on it as like, and which is why it's so infuriating to me when I see people like Ben fucking Shapiro, who was born into wealth, and saying, listen, if poor people want to be wealthy, they should just work harder. Like, how the fuck would you know? I would never say something like that, because I'd be embarrassed to say something like that, because you don't know anything about that experience. I saw a great quote on this, is like, for a lot of people, you didn't make good choices, you had good choices. A lot of people don't have good choices. Like they don't. And like, what are the odds of Ben Shapiro joining a street gang? Like, how would that ever happen? There's zero chance that could possibly happen. His course in life, from the moment he was born, when he took his first breath, it was already predetermined. He was going to be a successful human being. Like, yeah, sure, he may not have been a millionaire like he is now, but he was never going to want for anything. And people are born in the upper class and stay in the upper class, or they're born in middle class and stay in the middle class, and they shit on someone born lower class who stays lower class. Like, well, that's the same thing you did. Why? How could you possibly, cast that kind of judgment? It's wild that more people don't understand that. I don't get it at all.
It is a real, like when you said the gang thing, like, and again, I've talked about this issue many, many times, but I think that was a great point with the gang thing. It's just like, yeah, of course, like why do people think that gangs exist in pockets? Like why are there no gangs in the middle of fucking Westchester, New York? Like why are none of them if everyone had the same opportunities to start a gang, why is it only the poor black kids?
Well,
why is that the case?
Well, except this is like, we've talked about this before. It's because black people have crime genes. That's why. It's like, yeah,
that's the thing, TJ. They don't believe. I mean, they do, but like they won't say that. That's the most frustrating part. They will not say that.
No,
but they also they will not give any argument which acknowledges otherwise. Like they don't actually have an explanation for their beliefs.
I was homeless when I joined the military. Early on, I was paying my mom's rent while my friends had their cars and phones paid by their parents. They could just not understand. Yeah, it's true. Like if you don't know, I can't give you a proper like breakdown of poverty, because I never really went through it. But in the small increments that I experienced was terrifying. It was awful. I can't imagine if like that was it. Like I knew that there was nothing else. Like Larry Bird was not walking through that door. Like it was never going to get better for me. So yeah, but the crime thing is like, I remember having a discussion years ago with a friend of mine, and he was talking about, it was like during the Black Lives Matter riots and everything. And he was saying, yeah, what we got to do? We got to lock up these rioters. That's just bad news. They're just doing bad. So I was like, okay, so you're kind of operating under the assumption that bad people are just bad. They're just born that way. And if we lock up all the bad people, then the crime will go away. That's what we've been doing forever, and crime doesn't go away. That kind of proves that, That's not the issue. It's an issue outside of people who just kind of, born. And then I asked the same thing you asked. It's like, how come you never see people in Beverly Hills riot? Why don't you ever see that? Like, if rioting was just the result of people, just like reaching into their core and finding their evil motivations, how come you only see it in very predictable areas? And I don't. It's so goddamn fucking simple, but they got to hold on to these beliefs because that's what they were taught, and it makes them feel good about themselves. Like, well, I'm a good person. I would never do something like that. Unlike these slime out there.
Larry Bird ain't coming through my door, you old head.
So, all right, did you even get that reference? Did you know that reference?
I assume
okay,
I assume what I feel like I understand what must have happened back in the 80s.
It wasn't the 80s. It was the probably early 2000s, and Rick Pitino was the coach for the Kentucky Wildcats.
Yeah,
and he got hired. He went to the NBA. And so I think it's late 90s, maybe early 2000s. And he was hired by the Boston Celtics. Celtics sucked. They were terrible. They were an awful team. And so they went like, 15, 20 games with a horrible record. And they said, so, what's your plan here? He says, listen, we just have to practice harder. We got to work. He's like, look, folks, we got to face reality. Larry Bird ain't walking through that door. And so that's what the reference was to.
I thought like Larry Bird was like going door to doors, giving like scholarships to kids or something.
No. It's, there's no Deus ex machina that's just gonna show up and help you out. Maybe, but in general, that's not gonna happen. Those people are poor because they're evil, and well, that's true. A lot of people do believe that too. That's true as well. That's definitely true.
Prosperity gospel is like one of the most
that's true as well.
Evil things I've ever seen. But so let's talk about what we're talking about tomorrow. I have three things that I want to talk about. So first, the campus shit, Columbia. That has been a massive story, and it has gone from something that I think is a media distraction to something I think might have actual weight behind it. So I definitely want to talk about that. I want to talk about the bill that was passed today, the Israel funding / TikTok ban / go fuck yourself, John Cooper bill. Like that one we got to talk about. And I also wanted to switch things up and do a segment praising Joe Biden, because he has had a string of policy accomplishments in the past 2 days, between getting rid of non-compete clauses, getting rid, like, airlines have to compensate you when flights are canceled, and there was like two others. He increased the threshold for overtime pay for salaried workers by like a large margin. He went from like 38,000 to 56,000 or something like that. So he's been on a fucking heater, and then he signed to that fucking TikTok ban, let's give money to Israel bill, and just flushed it all down the toilet. But I did want to highlight some of the accomplishments of, what we're doing right, at least.
I like it. I didn't really have a lot. I was kind of scrambling to find one that none of them really jumped out at me. Honestly, the one that jumped out at me the most was this one with the spanking bill.
Honestly, let's do it again. Let's talk about it again.
Go up for it,
we have the heads in the office boys, and they look like they're 12. So like I think
I know
absolutely. The guy looks like he's 12, but speaks like he's a 1940s radio.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I remember. Oh God, I hate it when this happens, because I remember I did a TikTok live with him, like, I don't know, 6 months ago, and they told me this, like, oh yeah, we just graduated from college, we're 22. I'm like, oh my God, like I hate it so much. But yeah, I think they'll have a lot of fun with this one too. So yeah, we can do those four. That's good stuff. That's good stuff right there. We had I wanted to say one more thing before I sign out, just because it's trivia. I love this shit. But with Deus Ex Machina, I know you know what a Deus Ex Machina is, being a film guy and everything. But for those of you who are unaware, Deus Ex Machina is Latin for God from the machine. And it's a literary or, cinematic term in which things are awful, like everything is falling apart, and there's no way the hero can win. And then out of nowhere, they're rescued by this improbable event that's kind of absurd, and so like a god comes in and saves them. It's kind of hacky, like it's not looked upon well in literature, but it actually refers to an actual thing that happened in old Greek plays. And so in Greek plays, they would have these machines like these contraptions where they would lower people down like on cranes as they were gods, and the god would literally come from the machine and save the day. And so it's made its way into modern parlance, and I think that's pretty cool. I don't know. That's your trivia for the day, folks. I just always gotta have something in there, but that's pretty good for the Deus Ex Machina, and it sounds cool. Oh, John, have you ever seen Ex Machina?
I have seen Ex Machina.
What did you think of it?
I really like that film. I like Alex Garland as a director. That was his first one, I believe. I actually have more appreciation watching it back than I did when I watched it originally. It's definitely like when I watched it originally, I was a little disappointed in the ending because I thought it was going to go a different direction and be a little more, I don't know, Hollywood classic man versus machine plot. And it didn't. And looking back,
it kind of was.
Well, so it does, but it really, I thought it would go to like Terminator, Predator levels of man versus machine. There's an actual fight and conflict. There wasn't. She just got her ass whooped. Like the machine won very clearly and dominantly. But I thought Oscar Isaac was absolutely incredible in that movie. His best performance, I think.
That's what I was gonna say. That Oscar, I can't remember the character's name in Deus, but it's up there with my favorite bad guys. And like he was like I liked him. Like it's like I was like it was great to watch. Yeah,
you could watch it just for his character.
And
it would be worth it.
The scene when he's dancing with the robot. Chef's kiss.
It's so good. It's so good.
It's so good.
I remember I didn't know it was Oscar Isaac when I originally watched it, because I didn't know who Oscar Isaac was really. And then like I watched Oscar Isaac in Star Wars and stuff, and I was like, oh, that's Oscar Isaac. Then I went back and watched it, and I was like, wait, what the fuck? That's Oscar Isaac. I didn't realize he was such a good actor because I only saw him in Star Wars. But
yeah, I recommend Ex Machina a lot to certain people because like it's a movie that appeals to certain people. Like I don't think it's like I can see how it's kind of a niche
it's
kind of
definitely
film.
An indie sci-fi film.
Yeah,
you know what you're getting into there. But
it reminded me a lot of Her. I don't know if you saw Her.
I think Her's a pretty good comparison. Very, very different.
Like, even the ending is kind of similar to Her.
Yeah, it doesn't really follow the classic Hollywood 3-act structure that you expect it to. But yeah, no, Her's ending is also fucking fantastic.
Her is so good. John, one of these days we got to do like a segment just on movies. Like we're
gonna start a movie podcast. Like,
I know, right? It's just we got to do it sometime.
I've been. Have you ever heard Left of the Projector Pod?
No,
I haven't reached out to them yet, but like I've been like courting them on Threads. Because I'm just like, they need to come on the show with me and DJ, and we'll just do a whole fucking movie show.
I love it.
I'll be reaching out to them soon, but I just had to establish some sort of like relationship with them before reaching out. But cool. We'll see you guys tomorrow. We're early show tomorrow.
5 p.m. probably Eastern.
Most likely 5 p.m. Although we have to get confirmation from our guests. But yeah, be ready to be here bright and early tomorrow. At 5:30 at the absolute latest.
All right. Appreciate it. Later, folks.